Ask, believe, trust, surrender, receive. Today, we're looking at manifesting through a new lens, particularly Emma Mumford's lens. And we're going to learn about a 5-step manifesting practice that you can begin playing with immediately to start creating things in your life that you've been longing for and waiting for. So step into the world of manifesting again today with me. And let's go. Flow dreaming, still kinda woo-woo, is just what it sounds like. An escape into the world of woo. Also, a ride into you. And how to feel happier, wiser, and more self-aware in every way. It's your ultimate journey into personal growth and inner power. We'll explore ideas like how your energy self influences the kinds of opportunities you encounter, or how your personal growth can drive your business growth, or even how that feeling of being stuck is really always coming from something else. We just have to figure out what. That's right, we're a dash of woo-woo, a sprinkle of self-care, a heap of problem-solving and pattern-busting, and a giant cup of encouragement. We're going to relight so much passion, purpose, self-love, and confidence in you that you practically stagger. I'm Summer McStravick, your host, and welcome to Flow Dreaming, still kinda woo-woo. So normally we talk about manifesting through the lens of flow dreaming, my particular technique and the philosophy that, well, I've spent almost 800 episodes exploring. But today is different. Today, I brought in someone who is also an expert in this field, and she does things a little differently. So I thought I'd change things up. My guest, Emma Mumford, is the UK's leading voice in the law of attraction. She's an award-winning life coach and author of books Positively Wealthy and Hurt, Healing, Healed, as well as a YouTuber and podcast host of the Spiritual Queens Badass podcast, which, by the way, is how I found her with a name like that, right? I had to click on it. Emma uses the law of attraction with her own particular spin on it, and that is what we're going to be diving into right now. Let's get going. Emma, I am so happy that you are here and we get to chat again. This is wonderful.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Summer. It's been so fun doing this little joint little collab, so I'm excited to chat to you today.
Yes. And in case people are wondering, what collab? So I was blessed to be on Emma's podcast, and it's called the Spiritual Queens Badass Podcast. And I thought I'd bring her on mine as well because she and I overlap so many ways. You. I'm speaking right now to you. Not including the fact that we are both Virgos with Aquarius moons. It's just a fun fact I discovered as I was researching you a little deeper.
I love that. Well, that's probably why we get on so well, Summer, and our work, bonds together so easily.
There we go. Nice and practical with a little bit of the weird. That's what I always say. Okay. Let's jump in. You are a devout manifester, as I am, and I'm so curious. I just want to pick your brain because I love learning how other people do their practice. And I know that you've got a 5-step practice that is sort of your core practice. And I wonder if you could just start by, sharing what that is and kind of how you arrived at that as your method.
Yeah. And I think, when I first found the law of attractions kind of 8 years ago now, the traditional ask, believe, receive steps were so great in The Secret and Rhonda Byrne's work. And I feel like The Secret is probably the one thing people find almost straight away in their manifesting journey. So, I loved watching that. I loved reading that. And, obviously went along my own manifestation journey after that. And it came to about 2018 when I wrote my first book, Spiritual Queen. And I was really thinking about, right, what have I compiled data wise? What has worked for me? What hasn't worked for me? What works for my community? If I had to break down like the secret to manifesting, or what has really impacted like my practice and really supercharged it for me, what is that process? And I, very quickly in my manifesting journey hit blocks, hit obstacles. I had never let go or surrendered a day in my life, Summer. So you can imagine the hot mess I was in some parts of my manifesting journey. I thought
Typical Virgo. Typical Virgo. Yes, keep going.
I thought I had it nailed. I did not have it nailed. So, I learned a lot even in the first few years of finding the law of attraction and manifestation. So I really thought, well, ask, believe, receive are great steps, so needed and, have really helped me. But what do I feel if I could break it down to make it even more tangible would be that process that I feel has worked more than anything for me. And I've broke it down into 5 steps, with trust and letting go being the extra 2 steps in there. So ask, believe, trust, let go, receive. And as soon as I started talking about the 5 steps in my work and obviously wrote it in the book and, started to share that more of like, hey, if you're finding yourself hitting these obstacles and blocks, or you're finding that you have these limiting beliefs and fears, or you have never let go a day in your life like me, and you don't know how to surrender, like this is what it actually looks like to get the success that you want with your desires. So the more I spoke about it, the more people started resonating with it. And, a lot of people have said to me, do you know what? It makes just so much more sense having those extra steps. And I feel like from believe to receive the original steps, it felt like almost this huge hurdle of like, I ask, I believe, whoa, I receive. Whereas when you have that kind of middle knowledge of that trusting, which is that aligned and inspired action, and the letting go, which is that divine alignment and surrender, you're able to then actively track where you are in that 5-step process more, and it not feel so overwhelming or like this big leap, so to speak. So for me, it was just drawn upon my personal experiences and what had actually worked for me, what hadn't worked for me, and what I really felt had, really drawn it home for me of what supercharged everything. So I still believe that the ask and believe step are very similar, but a quick overview of how I see those steps is ask is setting your intention, being clear and having clarity is key with manifesting, because, if we're not clear on what we want, the universe is that divine mirror. So, the clarity we show up with to the mirror is reflected back to us. So it's important not to control that clarity or control, everything of how that looks. But having that clarity is so key to be able to set those clear intentions and see those clear results back to you. And then the second step is belief, which I believe goes a little bit deeper than maybe some of the traditional teachings of that step, in terms of diving into the subconscious world, diving into the inner world, and looking at our limiting beliefs, fears, cycles, and patterns. So, you might have, for example, you set an intention to manifest love into your life, and then that little inner critic saying, well, who are you to do that, or you're not worthy of that. And we all have this inner critic within us, who I believe is actually the inner child. And from working through the inner world and looking at those beliefs, fears, and patterns that every single one of us as a human being has, we're able to then look at the resistance and look at what stands in between ourselves and our desires. So what energetically stands in between us and that end result of our desires. So for me, that step is very inner work focused. It's about removing and releasing resistance, and then coming into that energetic match to your desire and vibration. And then trust, the new step, the third step, is all about taking aligned and inspired action. So it's trusting the process, it's trusting how things, align for you. But ultimately, we are co-creating with the universe, as you know. So, we have to show up 50% of the way. It's not a case of as being 90% manifestors, which I know I definitely was, where we make it happen, we go the whole way, and we're going to control it until it happens. That's not how manifesting works, but I think that's how I thought it worked, definitely. And then you have your 10% manifestors, who are the manifestors who, say, I'm going to win the lottery, I'm going to, win big. And I say, great, how many times do you play? And they're like, Oh, no, I don't enter the lottery. I don't actually play. So, you have your 10 percenters and your 90 percenters, but both ends of the scale can learn so much from one another. The 90 percenters can learn to have a more relaxed approach and surrender to that, like the 10 percenters. And the 10 percenters can learn how to take that aligned and inspired action that the 90 percenters absolutely love. So it's about coming into that midway 50-50 ground to allow yourself to be met by the universe. So that trust step is, again, trusting the process, trusting the timing of your life, but also putting yourself in the field of opportunity and possibility with the universe to say, here I am, come and give me my desires, universe. So you've got to be in it to win it, which the 10 percenters sometimes aren't always fully in it to win it. And then letting go and surrendering is the fourth step. This, arguably, I would say, is one of the most important steps in the process, for me anyway, and it definitely has been such a huge learning curve for me over the years. And sometimes it can sound quite contradictory to say, well, ask for your desire, believe, work through those inner workings and go along that process, trust, take that aligned and inspired action, and then just have to let it go. And I think some people think that letting go is giving up, and it definitely is not. It's not giving up on your desire. It's not saying, that's it, I give up, universe, it's not for me. It's simply saying this or something better for the highest good of all. It's saying, if this happens and comes into my life, brilliant. But if not, I trust there's something even bigger and better. And I trust there's even a more amazing way for this to come into my life. So letting go is simply letting go of the attachment, letting go of the need, and needing nothing attracts everything. So it really gets us into that surrendered state where we're allowing the universe to get to work and meet us at that 50-50 mark. And then receiving is the last step. And yes, it is receiving and celebrating that your desire is here. But also there's a first almost half step to receiving. And receiving is still a step as well. And, very often I see, especially in women, but, so many of us have this, actually struggle to receive. And I was definitely one of these people who did everything, hyper independent, Virgo woman. So it was really hard for me to actually divinely receive from everybody in my life, gifts, money, hugs, love, support. I really had to examine my relationship with receiving. And when I did, my capacity to receive abundance was, oh my gosh, so supercharged and on a whole different level. Obviously I was receiving abundance before, but it changed the whole game for me. So actually, are you getting into that energy of receiving? Are you allowing yourself to be met? Are you allowing yourself to receive? Is such an important question to ask right before that desire comes. So those are my 5 steps.
Ah, lovely. Hey, there's one that I really want to dig into because I get a question a lot in my own, when I'm teaching, the ask and the surrender. And you already kind of
Mm,
brought up the almost inherent contradiction, but I think of it more as a balance. When you're asking and you're setting the intention, you're throwing out a net of desire. And yet you're surrendering, which says, I want the desire, but I'm also surrendering and letting the desire arrive as it will, or perhaps not arrive at all. Can you
mm,
go a little bit more into that? Because that seems to be the a snag for a lot of us.
mm.
How do you go deeper into that, seeming contradiction?
Yeah, and it's so important because, like you say, it does look like a contradiction and it can confuse a lot of people. And I also get a very similar question about how specific we should be with our desires as well. Like, if we're really specific, is that controlling? And how do you balance that letting go and surrendering and being open to all possibilities and being specific at the same time? So I feel like those questions are really similar because of that balance, like you say. And in my opinion, in my eyes, it really is that balance of, if you're standing in front of that divine mirror of life and you're saying, well, I want some money. The universe will be like, there you go, there's £10. And you're like, I didn't want that. I wanted £1,000. That's not my desire. And the universe is like, well, you said you wanted some money. So you're a vibrational match to money. I've given you the result of money. So it pays to be clear so that we can receive the things that we want, but it's then looking at our need, our want, and our control with that. So if you are setting an intention, and I will use my own example here of manifesting love like I did a few years ago, that was actually coming from a place of fear. And, although I really wanted to manifest a lovely relationship, actually, when I went through, the steps that I've just gone through then, when I would get to the letting go and surrendering part, I was not letting go and surrendering because that desire was rooted out of a need, out of a filling a void, rather than from a place of fulfillment where I was okay by myself and I loved myself and felt fulfilled. So for me, that's the difference there of, are you setting that desire from a place of need, want, or lack, like it was for me? And then when you go along that process, even though I'd, gone through the belief step of the mindset, I'd taken the aligned and inspired action, I kept getting stuck on that fourth step of letting go, because every time I tried to let go or convince myself I was letting go, I wasn't. I was still deeply attached. I was feeling that lack. I was feeling that want, and I wasn't getting any closer to the outcome I wanted because I didn't feel that fulfillment within myself first. I didn't feel a sense of, I'm okay whether this happens or not. I was like, oh my God, I need it to happen. So the universe was reflecting that desperation, that lack right back to me through, challenging my mindset, through triggering me, through showing me all those different emotions that were still there. And actually, when I surrendered, when I became okay with both outcomes, when I became okay with all possibilities, no matter how that looked in my life, I found a sense of peace. And if you are not in that, genuine place of letting go and surrendering because of the level of peace you feel. And I think people, and again, speaking from experience here, when I learned this process, I think a lot of people feel that they can almost fake it till they make it with letting go. And that is probably one of the steps where you literally cannot fake it till you make it, because energy doesn't lie and the universe knows. And if you're sat there saying, I'm so surrendered and I'm so let go, but then you're needing and you're controlling and you're wanting, and that 90% manifester, for example, you're showing the universe that actually you're not in that that genuine energetic vibration at all. So when you do naturally, and it does feel, when you're authentically in that space, it does feel a very natural process to let go and surrender because you've gone through those other previous steps. It feels as easy as breathing, and you're surrendered by the level of peace that you feel within yourself. So that's how I would separate the two, or find the balance within the two. But again, with being specific versus letting go, I use relationships as a great example of this because, as you can imagine, I've heard all sorts over the years. And some people say, well, Emma, if this man does not have brown hair and brown eyes, I'm not even going to give him a date. He's not my dream man, and I'm not even going to entertain it. And I think we have to look at what our non-negotiables are and what our controlling expectations versus healthy expectations. So if you're someone who says, for instance, I 100% want someone who lives in the same town as me, for example, to make things easier for you. That's probably a healthy expectation. You probably wouldn't be too fixed if the person lived a little bit further away. But when we, latch on to those specifics of, it has to be this pay at this job, it has to be this company I work with, it has to be this ideal person that I'm looking at, it can't be anything else. That's where we start to get in our own way and block ourselves. Because imagine if there was a dark-haired man with blue eyes who would treat you even more amazing and would blow every expectation you ever had for life out of the water. You'd never know because you never gave it a chance. So I think it's looking at what those healthy expectations are versus the controlling expectations. And are those controlling expectations coming from a place of fear and lack?
Yeah, 100%. I agree with you on all of that. To shift again back to the 5 steps, all 5. So that's an overview, right? That's the arc of what you go through energetically, emotionally, and intellectually as you're deciding to create something. But how do you actually start the process? Is there a ritual? Is there a format? Is there a technique? How to take it out of, here are the steps to how do you actually do this practice? What do you teach?
Yeah. So I think, in the manifestation sphere, there's an abundance of so many incredible tools. And believe me, I've tried them, I've tested them, and I love trying them all because it's so amazing when you find something new and you're like,
I want to know the best one because the one you're going to tell me, but I also want to know the worst one you've tried too. Okay, so don't forget. All right, let's start with the best one though, the one you use.
Absolutely. So, yeah, I feel like over the years, what has worked for me and what hasn't has definitely changed and evolved as I've grown and changed and evolved, and like my understanding's deepened and my spirituality's deepened. But one thing that I have come to realize more than anything is actually that we have a manifesting superpower, or a couple of them. And, for me, I love writing, but I'm an author. So that would make total sense that I adore scripting, adore writing to my heart's content, all those goals down. But, I'd find that some of my community would be like, Emma, that literally is so painful. It feels like a chore. I hate it. I love visualizing. I love meditating. And I would find that actually visualizing would feel quite boring to me sometimes. And I couldn't quite tap into it, in other ways that people could. And it just didn't quite resonate with me in the way that I, assumed it would. So I would feel like, well, is there something wrong with me? I'm not doing it right. When actually we're all just different, and we all have a different manifesting superpower, whether that's you love writing, whether you're a visual manifester, maybe you're an audio manifester who loves listening to like subliminals and meditations, and you voice note your desires and, voice note your friends and listen to it back. There is an abundance of different ways that you can manifest. And I think it's important to try them, because you're not going to know what your manifesting superpower is if you don't try it. But ultimately, it's finding what works for you and what feels expansive. Manifestation practices should not feel restrictive. They should not feel like a chore, and it should not feel like it's draining the life out of you. It should feel fun. It should feel exciting. It should feel expansive and feel like, oh my gosh, I'm dedicating this time to myself. How incredible is this? So for me, I think my best practice, which I love more than anything, it's so hard to pinpoint because there's so many I love, but I do think I've seen the most results and power with dream lists for me, which is writing down, my dream house, my dream partner, what that looks like, getting very specific of what that relationship looks like, the characteristics and qualities, what the house looks like, etc. So I've used that for so many different things: relationships, our house, friendships. Like, I've used it for a lot. The worst one, I'm not sure there is a worse one, but I would say the most frustrating one has definitely been the 55 times 5 method for me. I got about halfway through and I was like, never again am I doing this.
Yeah.
My wrist hurts. I'm bored. What is this? So that's probably my, I would say, most unfavorable one to do. But I love using subliminals. That's been quite a fun one that I've got into over the last few years. I love meditation. I adore meditation. I recently got into the core energy of your desire and manifesting with the core energy of your desire. That's a tool that I've been using the last few years and put in my books. So I do like to use a whole array of them. But ultimately, if you are at that beginning stage and you want to start asking and you're like, okay, how do I get started? There's great books out there like Summer's, my own, where I've got tons of tools and places you can start. But just ask, get going, try these different tools and see what fits, see what doesn't.
So just start testing them out. I got to say the 55 by 5. It always makes me think back in my era, they used to punish kids by making you write out things on the chalkboard, like over and over, or on a piece of paper. You'd stay after school and you'd have to write 100 times, I will not spit on my friends, or whatever it was. So I always think of like, I am never going to use that for manifesting. That is,
Yeah.
I'd say my worst was poorly done affirmations.
Mm,
Meaning I would write the things and look at them, and then they just sat there like dead on the page, dead in my heart. And I thought, well, they're supposed to work because I'm looking at them and I'm repeating them without any sort of behind it, without any sort of energy or motion or feeling, or I would say flow. And I think that was one of the things that actually prompted me to start looking, what else is there? And I granted, some people do affirmations the right way, and it's very effective the right way. I was just not really doing it the right way. But it was good because it started me on my own journey to figure out the techniques that actually work for me. Do you cycle through different techniques? Do you kind of shift things around and change as you kind of expand and move, forward in your practice?
Yeah, definitely. And I think it's healthy to do that because, if you have a certain morning practice, for example, and you do the same things for like 6 months of like wake up, do some gratitude, do some EFT or meditate or something, and then write your affirmations down, it can become repetitive. And I think the one kind of cycle and thing that I've definitely felt, and I see a lot of people feeling as well with their manifesting practices, it becomes so repetitive and cyclical that it almost is like, ugh, why am I doing this? It becomes a chore, and that's not what it's about at all. So for me, it is a sort of like quarterly practice, I would say, where I review, like, I know that sounds very formal, but I do look at, what I'm doing and I say, right, does that still feel good? What's serving me? Does that still feel expansive? Does that, really light me up in the morning doing that or throughout the day? And if it's not, it's gone. And then I challenge myself because I feel like I definitely over the years, I don't know about you, Summer, but I found that by teaching manifestation, you kind of then get so in the teaching zone that you forget that you're also a student of life as well. So I, would go through patches where I would be like, I feel like I'm kind of hitting my point here, but actually by learning and being open and, like looking at what other people were doing and trying their methods, I was like, well, actually, this is expanding me as well to be able to keep learning, keep growing. Like, I don't know everything. And, we never know everything in life. So, yeah, definitely for me, it's a ever evolving practice where I want to try those new things. Like subliminals was that for me. I used to think, oh, what's the use in those? They work for some people, but I can't be bothered to try that. Whereas when I tried it, I was like, this is so easy. I love this. So,
Uh-huh.
you just never know. You could be surprised.
Yeah, yeah. So when you manifest too, sometimes um, people are always saying, I got this small thing very easily, or I got this thing that I wasn't even really trying for. But the thing I really want, I'm not getting. So and then they kind of lead to, I don't know if this works at all. And then they drop it. And then, a year goes by and they come back to it again. When you see people who are kind of in that cycle of getting some stuff, but the big thing never comes, and or the frustration of saying, oh, it doesn't work, and then dropping it and coming back, how would you work with someone like that? Because I know some people listening right now, they're like, that's me.
And it's so common. You're so right. It's so common because, as humans, we are wired to want things, right? It's natural for us to desire and want things, and that's okay. And I think sometimes you can find people who feel a little bit guilty or shameful for wanting, all those things or keep manifesting things. Or is it greedy to keep asking for things? So, all of those things are valid, but, we live in a world of infinite possibilities and infinite abundance. So, of course, we can ask for as many things as our heart desires. There's no limits, there's no capacity. But definitely I find that, the smaller things in quotes, because we hold the less resistance to it, the least resistance. Whereas the bigger things, like for me in my example, was that relationship I wanted to manifest was huge for me. So of course there'd be more resistance, there'd be more blocks, there'd be more limiting beliefs potentially there, more work to do. So, for instance, if you were comparing manifesting the love of your life to a free coffee, we'd think, oh, well, of course the coffee is going to be really easy. But in the universe's eyes, 1,000 coffees, 1,000 puppies, 1,000 pounds is all the same energy and frequency. It's us as human beings who put that focus, who put that pressure, who put that weight and that big on, in quotes, focus on things. So if we see something as bigger or more harder, guess what? We're affirming that. And that doesn't mean that that's not true, because again, we're going to hold more resistance to the things we really, really want to achieve. But I think as well, it comes down to your relationship with trust. And I think this is probably, again, one of the biggest lessons for me in my manifesting journey, and for so many of us. I see some going, yes. um,
Thumbs up.
it's
Yeah.
such a
Yes. 100%. Trust is a big one I teach on so often, so much. People are tired of me talking about it. But let's hear it from you, because they've heard it from me. I want your perspective on trust.
Yeah, and like trust, it's a hard one, but ultimately I see it as kind of two pillars. I always teach two pillars around lived experience is the first pillar. So if someone came to manifesting today and found our work and was like, I'm going to start manifesting, their level of belief is going to be very different to, say, someone who's been manifesting for 7 or 8 years, for example. They're going to have more experience under their belt. They're going to have more, data and evidence that manifestation exists and they can trust the process. So naturally, lived experience is absolutely going to build that level of trust over time. And I do, recommend to people to write down a list of all the things that you have manifested, maybe some things that felt really impossible to you, or you had the most resistance with, and against all odds it manifested, or you thought, gosh, I'm so shocked after all this time that manifested. Write a list down, because there's your evidence. There is the evidence of you are a powerful manifester, and despite everything, there is evidence you can trust this process and trust that the universe is going to deliver your desire. And the second pillar to trust is also mindset. So looking at your mindset around, do you trust yourself? I know a lot of the time people say, I just can't trust the universe. I just can't trust this is going to happen. But actually, we always turn it inwards first. The inner always reflects the outer. And, it was only when this question was put to me that I was like, bingo, there it is. Did I trust myself? No. Did I trust myself to hold and receive that abundance? No. So there was the inner work that needed to be done. So for me, it was looking at my relationship with trust. Did I trust myself? Did I trust myself to hold it in my body? Did it feel safe to receive that and safe in my body? And those were some great questions I asked myself to really dive into my relationship with trust, and also what broke my trust in my own human past. What has broken my trust in the past for me to not trust the process and trust that the universe can be that support and provider for me. So it'll be really interesting when you ask yourself those questions where that leads. But definitely lived experience and mindset, I believe, are the key to building that long-lasting foundational trust.
Beautiful. For me, when I delve into the realm of and the world of trust, I discover most of my limiting beliefs, my lack thinking, surrounding it. Right, that's where all the good stuff is what I like to say. Clear that out, and it's like repaving an old potholed road. Everything smooths out and becomes so much easier and so much faster in whatever I'm creating.
Yeah.
So we're wrapping up, and people are going to want to know more about you, Emma, where to find you, what you do, we've already mentioned you have this wonderful recent book, Manifesting Rituals, Powerful Daily Practices to Manifest Your Dream Life. But you've got a lot. How would a person get started kind of learning your methods for manifesting?
Yeah, well, thank you so much for having me, Summer, first of all. But if anybody wants to come and have a look and come and dive into those steps or anything that I have to offer, I have my podcast, like Summer said, Spiritual Queen's Badass Podcast. I'm pretty much on all social media platforms at I am Emma Mumford. And you can find me on my website, emmamumford.co.uk, where you'll find all my books and everything that I do.
Beautiful. And you do live events and things like that sometimes, right? Don't you have something coming up this year?
Yeah, so I've got a couple. I do an annual Glastonbury retreat, which is my absolute favorite because I love Glastonbury. I don't know if you've ever been, Summer, have you?
Yes, I have met like 20 years ago. But yes, I saw that one. I was like, that sounds fabulous.
Yeah, it's such a magical place. And I'm really lucky that I live nearby it as well now. So for me, that is like my ultimate favorite event, that I can like have a really intimate retreat with everyone and have a magical day in Glastonbury. So we do that. And then, yeah, I've got some London events as well coming up in November and in June as well with Alternatives and MBS. So a fun little London trip as well to see everyone, which would be nice.
Beautiful. Well, Emma, this has been so delightful. And, your energy when you speak about manifesting is so light and just joyful. And I love that. It's not, you don't embody it being hard or difficult or a slog to get through. It's like I feel like I'm just jumping on a slide with you, and we're just going to slide right into this. So I love it. I'm always secretly judging people's energies when I interview them. yours is beautiful. It's like bright, shiny sparkles of yellow and
Oh,
pink.
thank you. That's the Virgo in you.
Yeah. All right. So it's been wonderful having you. Thanks so much for joining me today, Emma.
Thank you for having me. It's been so much fun.
Maybe you remember one brilliant thing, my summertime manifesting challenge. Well, I wanted a way to keep that energy going all year round. That's how I ended up creating the Flowdreaming Mastermind. This is different than any other program I've offered. For one thing, it is packed with teachings. Not only do you get immediate access to 36 courses and all the accompanying flow dreams and worksheets, but you and I will get to flow dream together each month live. Each month, I plan a special event, a flow dreaming session coinciding with the full moon or other potent day, and we gather to create huge manifesting energy. Think of it like a series of special events, and you're invited to every single one as a Flow Dream Mastermind member, a Flowy, if you will. And best of all, it's affordable. Costs as much as taking a family of 4 to Applebee's each month. No kidding. You'll get to connect with like-minded souls around the world for flow dreaming parties, joyful energy cleansing, flow dreaming, some woo-woo rituals that show a little of my witchy side, and just a heck of a good time. Because the lighter and brighter you are, the lighter and brighter your life is. Check out the Flow Dreaming Mastermind at flowdreaming.com, because our next special event and party is just around the corner.